Hey everybody, Jarrell here with another exciting, riveting interview. And this time is my pleasure to be speaking with singer, songwriter, and dreamy heartthrob, Teddy Gray. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. I'm in the fine state of Nebraska. So
In case you guys can tell, Teddy is on a current tour right now throughout the US, but we'll talk more about that later. So in these days of COVID and the Russian war and Will Smith's whole like pursuit of slappiness, how are you holding up?
I'm holding up all right. This is my first time ever being on a tour, and it's not just to say out of the gate. It's not for my music. I'm a part of a national tour for a show called The British Invasion, where we play Beatles and Rolling Stone songs and stuff like that. But still, it's a big adjustment going from being home all the time to suddenly waking up and not knowing what state you're in. But I've been handling it pretty well so far. I did get COVID in the middle of the tour and had to miss a couple shows, but other than that, we're flying high.
I think a lot of people may not know much about your like illustrious career. So want to just back up, let everybody know like how long you've been a musician and, blessing the world, I should say, with your brand of talent.
Yeah, sure. So I started releasing original music in high school, most of which has been scrubbed from the internet and for good reason. And, then once I got to college, I went to Hofstra on Long Island and met up with some like-minded individuals who were better musicians than I was and helped me bring some of my demented projects to life. The biggest of which being a parody musical I did of Garfield called Garfield the Musical, which got me kind of a minor fan base online. And then after releasing that project, I transitioned into just doing music. So I put out my first mixtape, Rock and Roll McDonald's, the following year. And then after that, got signed to Mother West Records and just put out my first official album, songbook, whatever you want to call it, called The Great Failed Romances of the 20th Century, which is a concept album about exactly what it says in the title.
Mm-hmm. So are you based out of Brooklyn area? Like where you from?
I grew up in Massachusetts and I had never really even been to New York, but decided to go to college there because I was just intrigued by it. And then after graduating, I lived in Brooklyn for a year, but now I live in Astoria, which I like a little more, even though I don't think it's as hip.
Yeah. So when I first started getting to know about you, I knew like, oh, we will definitely be good friends when I found out that you are a big Garfield fan and did that musical that you were talking about. Did you read the comics like I did and the books and get an obsession like I had?
Yeah, I grew up reading the comics. I was obsessed with like newspaper comics growing up. I first wanted to be a cartoonist, but then I realized that it was pretty much a dead art form and I wouldn't make any money. So instead, I decided to go into the very lucrative world of theater and self-produced bedroom pop. Yes, I grew up reading the books, watching the specials, this and that. And then I just kind of, like, to be transparent about it, I wanted to write a musical or have some sort of project, but I knew that just me putting out an original work with no pre-established career was just probably destined to go unnoticed. So I needed some sort of like gimmick. And I mean, Garfield memes were all the rage and they still are. So yeah. I guess it was partly for cynical reasons that I chose it, but I also did grow up loving and reading the comics and knowing enough about the world to parody it. So it just ended up kind of being a convenient choice in that respect.
Yeah. You ever wonder why Garfield was more popular than Heathcliff, even though Heathcliff came out before him?
Yeah, Heathcliff is kind of like, he's the cooler version. Like Heathcliff got more punk cred, it's a little more.
Yeah.
Garfield's, as much as we all love Garfield, he's a little more of a normie. Heathcliff is the best punk. We like him.
Yeah, I guess if you want to say a cat eating lasagna is normal, then sure, but it's a lot more normal than a cat just beating the hell out of bulldogs, like just for looking at him funny. But I always think that the reason is because Garfield knew how to advertise. He had the specials out before Heathcliff even did his own cartoon show on Saturday mornings, and then Garfield did that cartoon afterwards. and Garfield was doing like commercials for like cat food and hotels. Remember that in the 80s? And I think the biggest thing is when you're driving in your car back in like their late 80s, early 90s, and you look at in the someone else's rear view window who will be like suction cup to the back of their window. It wasn't Heathcliff. It was always Garfield.
Yeah, I think that, centuries from now, when our civilization as we know it has crumbled, the last remnants of it found amongst the rubble will probably be some sort of Garfield memorabilia.
Just this Garfield suction cupped onto to the the time capsule.
Yeah, exactly.
So you actually mentioned your mixtape Rock and Roll McDonald's. Is that's where you contacted us when I first heard of you to review this collection of singles and also B-sides, I believe it's mostly this mixtape is. And like I said in the review, which you guys can check out on our YouTube page in our album review section, I loved a lot of the songs that you wrote on there, whether it's the Let's Not Have Kids or the 27 Club I thought was good. And I love the 2010s. Just the way you have this really well-crafted, insightful lyrics is really what drew me into you. So I definitely started following your career leading up to this album. We're definitely gonna get into. But I wanted to ask this thing about the rock and roll album. You worked with Trey Cool from Green Day on a couple of songs. How'd you pull that off?
I pulled that off by finding his isolated drum tracks on YouTube, downloading them to my computer and recording over it.
Okay.
I just kind of figured that I was too much of an unknown to be sued. And also, in general, punk drums can be kind of generically, it's kind of hard to tell what's the real one versus the fake one. I mean, Trey Cool is distinctive enough that you can tell, but I mean, I certainly wasn't hiding it. Both our albums begin with the same fill, like
yeah. And I thought he just did that. So when we reviewed the album, I thought, oh, he's just like, paying homage to the song. I want to say it was Burnout, I guess, from the Dookie album. Yeah. So, okay. So wow, we learned something new today, everybody. I did not know that.
I'm a fraud.
It's okay. But you put that album out. I guess you did get a decent following out of that. So now you were like, all right, I'm going to decide to do my next release, the double album you were speaking of, conceptual album, which is called The Great Veiled Romance of the 20th Century. And it's about an hour and a half long, 30 tracks. When we reviewed it, and I want to ask you the same thing. That's a little ambitious for a debut album, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. But that's kind of what attracted me to it. I like artists in general with big egos, or just people who take big swings right out the gate, because I like the fact that, you can either come away with something great, or just as likely you might be able to fall on your face. And I was willing to take that risk. It was exciting to me, but also, I'm on a small label. I have a pretty small following. It's not as if I was Olivia Rodrigo or whatever, like saying I'm going to put out a 30-song concept album. There was much less risk involved with me, but also it's what I wanted to do. So that was really kind of the only reason I did it. Was like, this is the album I feel like making next. So
yeah, well, it worked for Dewey Cox and Walk Hard when he made that ambitious masterpiece that he was working on. If you've ever seen that film, I can't remember how it went, but
A Beautiful Ride. We were just watching the band on the tour bus the other day. Love
that
classic.
Yeah, just with the goats and the chimes and that he was adding in there.
I'm getting goats on my next album.
Right. Definitely got to do that. So how did you even come up with this concept with this album, though?
I guess a lifelong fascination with celebrity culture, particularly older celebrity culture, and doomed romances in general. I think something that I write about a lot, even in the Garfield musical, is this fascination with problematic or flawed figures that are still revered in some way. And one way to kind of explore that toxicity and why we're fascinated by it was just by exploring relationships, some of which that were well known, like Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and some that were much lesser known, like Barry Williams and Florence Henderson. So I kind of thought that it was a good way for me to get out all my knowledge on that era, and also would be a good home to all the songs that I had written for years that I had never really like found a good home for. Like there were
Mhm.
a third of the album were songs that I had written or had in some form prior to Rock and Roll McDonald's, but they just didn't fit in. But when you're doing a 30-song album, you know, you can stretch a little bit musically. So I thought that would be a good way to give all those songs a home.
Yeah, and then obviously you were saying there's some romance that you didn't even know about. So was there research for those more lesser known ones hard, or was it all like kind of equally? You had to do your research for all of them.
Well, there were some that I felt a responsibility to represent as well as I could. Like for Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, it was a pretty big, like iconic romance that I wasn't overly familiar with. So I had to read Katharine Hepburn's book, watch a bunch of documentaries. I watched, I think all of the 9 films that they starred in together. Just read a lot because I kind of felt like the song in some way had to live up to their legend or their personas. So in cases like that where I felt like it was a big time couple, I had to do a lot of research to really represent it well. But if it was something like Vanilla Ice and Madonna, you know, you can read about it in an hour and pretty much get all the info.
which is probably how long the relationship lasted anyway.
Yeah.
Which I remember saying, like, I didn't know about that, honestly. And this is really what I want to say about this album. Like, what I loved about it was it's like the songs are great, like the way that you constructed them. And I liked in some cases, depending on the artist, you were trying to capture their particular musical sound. Like the Ike and Tina song definitely sounds like straight up like a song they would have did together. Or like the I think you did a song about Cher and Sonny Bono, and it sounded like what they would have did during their variety show. And what I also liked is I didn't know about some of these relationships, so it makes you want to research it. So it's like an exciting homework assignment that the album, like, you know, pulls out of you. So it's like I want to know more about that. And then once you're reading the lyrics and getting into like what the songs are about, whether you're trying to do it from their perspective or how we're looking at their relationship, I thought that was really fascinating to the point where it made my top 10 list of albums of 2021.
That made me very happy because that was exactly what I was hoping for. People to go like, who the hell is this kid? And eventually like slowly but surely be won over by it. And then, you know, learn some new interesting culture from it too.
Yeah. It's like anything. If you any song, if you don't, or any piece of work, at first you don't get it, but after like the 75th or 85th time, it'll grow on you. You know, but it's really amazing. And also, like I said in the review, like I didn't know there was so much underground like homosexuality going on in like the entertainment world in the 1900s, but that was interesting too. Like now I look at James Dean a completely different way now.
Yeah.
But
well, it's funny because that song, which is one of my favorites actually, recently what we've been doing is for each song on the album, a friend of mine, we've been putting out a little video essay where we go over the history of the relationship that the song is about and just kind of give some insight into that and the song. And then there was some guy that I guess is working on a biography of James Dean or something like that, who found it on and tweeted about it, the video essay, and he said like, this is not true at all. This is nonsense. James Dean and Brando were never lovers. These claims are completely outlandish. And it's like, look, dude, like it's been kind of public rumor for many years, and a lot of people who are in the know think that it happens or confirm that it happened. So I don't create history. I just sing it.
Yeah, exactly. You just hinted on what I was going to ask you about. You're finding a really interesting way to promote this album. So want to tell people more about the YouTube series you're doing, right?
Yeah, it's a YouTube series. So every week, give or take, we put out a video essay somewhere between like 6 and 12 minutes that goes over song by song the album, and as a result all the relationships on it. So episode 1 was about Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, and it's not like an in-depth research because, like, quite frankly, then all the videos would have to be like 20 minutes to a half hour, and putting out 30 videos of that length is just something that would kill me. It's hard enough to
yeah,
as it is. So we kind of give you the cliff notes just enough knowledge that if you know what we say in the video, now you kind of have a working knowledge of their relationship, enough to the point where hopefully you'll enjoy the song more.
Again, great album. I definitely recommend people listen to it. But right now, I mentioned earlier, you're on a tour, and you kind of talked about it at the beginning. It's not a tour for this album. You're part of a musical, the British Invasion musical, right?
Yeah, it's called. It's weird actually. Despite being a part of the show, I've seen like the title change. Sometimes it's just called the British Invasion. Sometimes it's the British Invasion live on stage. But I guess either way, you get the point. It's somewhere between a tribute concert and musical, in that we play a set, like a concert set, of the hits from the British Invasion band, so the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, etc. But then also we give you some history on the era. So we're talking in British accents the whole time, and wow, that was horrible. That sounded more Irish, but I promise it's good if you actually see it.
Right.
And we do projections. We have a big screen behind us where we show you video clips and projections from that era. So it's sort of supposed to take you through the whole era and give you some history and context on what inspired the movement, while also just being a rock concert in its own right. So actually it's sort of similar to the album, in that we're discussing bands and musical artists and historical figures, and we're trying to emulate them in their style without doing a direct impression. Like, I'm not coming out and saying like, "Hello, I'm John Lennon," and other people "Oh, I'm Mick Jagger." So it's we try to have elements of it in our performance so that it's recognizably them without becoming pastiche, which is what I tried to do on the album as well. Although sometimes it's probably just pastiche.
How did you get part of this musical, actually?
Well, after to be honest, when the album was coming out, I was having difficulties with the promotion of it and this and that, and I was just kind of getting depressed, and I felt like I had worked for a long time on this album, and I just kind of felt like it was gonna not be particularly noticed. So, but I was waiting for it to come out, and so I just kind of needed something to occupy my time instead of just worrying about the album, because of course at that point it was done. So I just got back into auditioning like crazy for everything in theater, because I've been doing theater for years. I did it all through college, and then there was no theater obviously during COVID, unless you wanted to do Zoom theater, which I was not interested in. I'll do Zoom interviews, but not
right. Much appreciated.
Yeah. So and then this was just something that I saw on Actors Access, which seemed like a good fit, because they said just film yourself accompanying yourself playing and singing some British Invasion songs. So I think I did Twist and Shout and I Can't Get No Satisfaction and stuff like that. And then they liked me enough to call me in, had an audition and a callback, and then got the part. So which was great, because it meant that even if the album release didn't go well, I knew that I had something else to look forward to. But the album release did go well, so it ended up.
All right. I'm out of questions. So, is there any question that you wish people would ask you?
Is there any question I wish people would ask me? How did you get so attractive? How did you get so?
Yeah, as a devastatingly handsome person that like you and I, we have to go through like this pain of being so handsome. But
it's hard, because people just are afraid to approach you. But I would just want them to,
I spend hours like in the mirror, just like, God, how does the world like deal with this, like just attractiveness?
It's hard, but we're in the entertainment industry. It's a big part of our job is looking at ourselves in the mirror.
How about you let everybody know your contact and social media information then?
Sure thing. It is Teddy Gray on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. On Instagram and Twitter, just look up at Teddy Gray III, because I am the third, Teddy Gray the third, and that's GREY, not GRAY. And you can find me on Spotify too, just Teddy Gray, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all that good stuff.
All right. And again, thank you very much for doing this with me. I ever since you contacted me a couple of years ago, I'm like, I got to meet this guy. And hopefully one day when you're back to touring, especially with this new album, I can go check out one of your shows.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if you are a musician, artist, or some kind of business entrepreneur, you'd like to have your stuff promoted, you can contact us for an interview at njhabitradio@gmail.com. Put in the subject interview. I'd like to keep it really simple. And check out more interviews and videos on our channel and support your local music scene. Bye bye.
Like and subscribe, folks.